Print versus return. One of the most common mistakes made by new programmers is exemplified right here. We have a function called cube, and cubed prints x cubed. When I call it with 2 and run it, it correctly. So to appearances, this function works. If I were to, instead of calling cubed of 2, if I were to print the result of calling cubed of 2, it still looks like it worked, well, sort of. We printed 8, and then we get this weird none going on here. We might ignore that none and say, well, I don't know, we got the 8, so it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. Because if I were to print cubed of 2 times 2, well, we'd expect to get 16. When instead what we get is an error. Because it says it printed 8 to start with, not 16. And then it complains about unsupported types is trying to multiply none by int. Not at all what we wanted. And the reason is because this function does not contain a return statement. As we just learned, if you don't have a return statement, Python adds that one for you. And so when we call cubed, sure enough, it printed x cubed, but it didn't return x cubed. It returned none. So while we printed to the console the value 8, what came back from this function call was none. And then we tried to multiply none by 2, which isn't at all what we wanted, and of course crashed, as you'd expect. Basically, functions shouldn't do printing in general. Printing is something that's done rarely, and think about like most applications that maybe they're graphical, they don't even have a console. Maybe they run on a server, so you couldn't see the console anyway. So console output is, in the quote-unquote for real, it's used for debugging purposes. In an introductory course, we'll use it actually to interact with the user because it's harder to do graphical output in the beginning. But generally speaking, functions should not have print statements. So unless you want to use them for debugging. So this print statement right here doesn't belong here. It should be gone completely. We should have a return statement. We should be returning x cubed. Now this function computes x cubed and returns it, leaving the printing to the caller. So in fact, now we got 16. In fact, if we don't multiply by 2, we still have 8. This has one effect, which is this as follows. If we only call cubed of 2, nothing happens. The reason for that is, sure enough, we called cube of 2 and it computed 8, but we didn't tell it to do anything with that result. So it computed 8 and then did nothing with it. If you wanted to see that, you would have to put the print around the result, but you would do it at the point of the call, not inside the function definition. And that is return versus print, an idea that you have to keep clear. Functions need return statements.